members present. So good morning. I'm calling to order the November 2020 meeting of the IHCDA Board of Directors. We are meeting pursuant to the board's policy for participation by members of the IHCDA Board of Directors in board meetings by simultaneous electronic communication. This means that only 3 members must be physically present at the site of the meeting. The remaining members may call in. There will be an audio feed for the general public so that members of the public can listen to the meeting, and there will be a link to the video recording posted on IHCDA's website next month. At this time, the motions are being made, or at the time the motions are being made, each board member that makes a motion, state your name, your first and last name for the record, and then we will tally the votes by roll call if I remember. I will now take the roll call of board members to confirm members who are present in their location. Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch is present. Mark Pasquarelli.
Present. Indianapolis.
Pasquarella. Yes. Board member Kelly Mitchell.
I'm here in Indy.
Board member June Midkiff.
June wasn't able to make it this morning.
Okay, June is absent. Board member Andy Place.
Andy Place by phone.
Thank you, Andy. And board member Mike Schaffmeyer.
Present virtually from Evansville, Indiana.
Thank you. And board member Tom McGowan. Tom is not present at the moment. So our first order of business is approval of the minutes of the board meeting from October 27, 2022. Are there any additions or corrections? And if not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Mark Pasquarella, move to approve.
Thank you.
Kelly Mitchell, second.
It's been moved and seconded, and we will call the roll. Suzanne Crouch votes yes. Mark Pasquarella.
Aye.
Kelly Mitchell.
Aye.
June Midkiff is absent. Andy Place.
Aye.
Mike Schaffmeyer.
Aye.
And Tom McGowan is absent. Thank you. We now want to welcome Zach Gross, who will present the supportive services for emergency housing voucher program award recommendation. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. And I know the name of this is really long and it is that complicated. So I'm going to do my best to explain it in a way that makes sense. But let me know if you have any questions or need to go in depth into anything else. I'm happy to do so. The state of Indiana was allocated 723 emergency housing vouchers through the American Rescue Plan. And 338 of those were allocated to IHCDA. Those vouchers are to assist families who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. They are referred to the local coordination system to the PHA for housing. So IHCDA, received these vouchers, and we knew that if we didn't have any services dollars attached to those, that they were not going to be as impactful as they could be, because the ability of households to locate housing on their own or with limited assistance who are experiencing homelessness is very difficult, especially now. And then ongoing services are necessary to ensure their stability and success. So we knew that if we had services available, we'd be able to serve people with a broader variety of needs and be able to have more of an impact with these funds and those vouchers into really supportive housing, what we would consider permanent supportive housing units. So we partnered with the Division of Mental Health and Addiction with FSSA. We asked them if they could provide any services dollars to help us out with this. It's pretty ambitious. It's a new partnership for us of this type, but we haven't done anything like this in the past that I'm aware of. And they came back with us and awarded us $5,872,802 to allocate out to the community mental health centers around the state, who will then provide the supportive services for these vouchers. So it's kind of complicated because we're bringing together, I think, 4 different federal funding streams here. So the CMHCs who are receiving funding will be billing Medicaid first, but we always know that there's a gap with those funds, and that gap is substantial, and that it can't necessarily pay for the upfront engagement type services that are really needed to get people into the units and into services and enroll. So that's where these funds come in, is things that Medicaid can't pay for, or if somebody happens to be ineligible for certain funds, then these funds can fill that gap. But we also know that there was still a gap there because these funds have not too many restrictions, but some. And it's it is a lot of money, but we are talking about 723 vouchers, which is also a lot of vouchers. And we want this to run for at least 5 years. So we know we still had a gap in funding for services. So we allocated $5 million in our home ARP allocation plan that was approved by HUD, and those funds are set aside to fill additional gap that is left over on top of what we are getting from DMHA. So we put out an RFP for these funds. Services can pay for a really broad variety of things, pretty much any wraparound service that is going to ensure stability, connection to health and wellness kind of services, mental health coverage, all those things are allowable. We put out an RFP to award out the funds. Only community mental health centers were eligible to request funding, and that is because they are the only ones that can bill Medicaid for the types of services that we need them to bill for, and that's what we're supplementing. So we put that out on August 4th, and responses were due on September 19th. We received one response, and today I'm recommending that we award the home ARP portion of funds to that organization. That is Valley Oaks Health. So we are still working through the money from DMHA and how we have to structure that. So this is a little bit new kind of model for us, and we'll be working through it as we go. But we wanted to get them, under contract and awarded so they can start providing services to the AHV recipients in their area, which is Tippecanoe County. And so we know that, obviously one response is not enough. So we reissued RFP. So we worked with DMHA to kind of structure this, and knew that we would have to reissue it multiple times to kind of keep bringing on new providers as they're able to and have capacity. We're doing more targeted outreach now to get them to be comfortable with the model. I mean, it's newer for them, and I think a lot of our partners are having some capacity issues and staffing issues, and so they're a little wary of taking on something really new and really big. So I think through working with them, we'll be able to increase the responses that come in quite a bit. And then if they don't respond, if we end up not getting responses in certain areas, then we have the flexibility to be able to award some funds to other agencies to cover services still for these households. But we really want to get those Medicaid services in as well. So because those can pay for a really broad variety of things that are really expensive that our funding might not necessarily be able to cover as well. So we are recommending today that Valley Oaks Health be awarded $262,794, and that is just a per voucher amount based on how many vouchers were allocated to Tippecanoe County out of our $5 million home ARP award amount available.
So you have 5 million total, right? And so 263,000, what we're awarding their change.
Yeah, about that.
And so is it because the CMHA, the community mental health centers don't have, maybe not the capacity, they don't have the staffing? Do they have enough money, federal money of their own, that they don't need additional federal monies, perhaps? Or
yeah,
and what's the time limit on getting this money out the door?
Sure. Yeah, I think that in terms of capacity, I think it's a lot of it's just because of restrictions and inability to hire in certain areas. We are facing a shortage of, especially these kinds of personnel who are trained and qualified to provide case management services and mental health services. So I think there's a lot of funding that has come their way, but it's all restricted or designated for certain things. And we know that since they have the ability to bill Medicaid, that's the first line priority for billing for these funds would only come in after they've already used any other funds that they have, basically. So any federal funding that they have that person is already eligible for, they need to be billing that first, and then they would come in and fill our funds for the things that those funds can't pay for. And there are some things I think that are, that they won't be able to pay for probably with any funds that they have that we would be able to pay for that are a little bit more wraparound services oriented.
And so what's the time limit on this?
So we have to have the time limits don't totally align. So right now our award with the DMHA is through, I believe it's September 2025. Don't quote me on that, but that I think that's correct. And then the home ARP funds we have to have spent by 2029.
Okay. So you're doing a different kind of outreach to try to get more providers for community mental health centers to participate. And so what's your time limit on that? I mean, you're gonna see like in 6 months, if you haven't gotten that kind of participation that you were looking for, then reevaluating and seeing that there's a different way to use these?
Yeah. So we have the RFP out now, and we're working to get those organizations interested and make sure that they understand the model. And if we get, depending on the responses we receive, so probably this round, if we get it back in and there's, we get several more responses, but there's areas of the state that aren't covered, and we'll know through conversations with those, community mental health providers if they are not interested in doing this, and then we will evaluate that, put that back out for other organizations with a little bit of a different model so that we can still get those funds out and provide services.
Okay. Any questions, board members?
Yeah, I just have a couple comments and questions. So in the outreach, what have they said is the problem on why they didn't come in? Or have we gotten that dialogue?
Yeah, we've gotten it a little bit, and I think this is sort of new for us. I mean, we're not used to being, putting up funds and then saying, well, I don't know if we can do it. For the longest time, we've had this gap where, the CMHCs have been engaged in the work we do, and they're already providing a lot of services, but some of the key pieces that they haven't been able to pay for, they've been wanting to be able to pay for. And I think now that the funds are available, it's just, since the pandemic, it's a different landscape, and they're unsure if they're going to be able to staff and fully deliver on this program. So they're a little bit hesitant, I think, to take on new large programs, and especially some more complicated programs. And I think maybe some of it is just that, there is a lot of, there's a lot going on here, and I think maybe that then through reading it, it's just, do we want to sit down and try to understand all this? So I think part of the outreach is really kind of taking that fear almost away and saying, it's not that, difficult, and we'll, help work through it. So I think we're really wanting to partner with them and work with those partners who are, really skilled and are able to deliver those high quality services that we know they already are doing and can do. And we're willing to, sit down and work through this with them so that it makes sense for them to do. So I think, if they're able to provide, some service that's even if it's more limited than in terms of like geographic coverage, if they want to take 1 or 2 counties in their coverage area as opposed to everything in their coverage area, we are open to that as well, and then would probably work with them throughout the term of the grant to increase their coverage if they have the capacity to do that.
So am I hearing the structure is fine and can be utilized? It's just a kind of like a marketing problem of working with them, or does the structure not work? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Sure. Yeah, I think the structure, I mean, it's new, but I think it does work. I mean, it has a lot more flexibility than anything that we've done in the past in terms of services funding. So I think that it will work. And I've heard from some organizations that they're very excited about this, or the prospect of it is, is exciting. So I think it's just figuring out, communicating on that structure and kind of talking through, working through it, and doing more of that outreach and marketing.
So the anticipation is that if we approve this one today with the new RFP, more communication going out. And so I like the idea of the flexibility. And so at that point, as they ran through their Medicaid money, then at that point, we would anticipate this driving ramping up pretty quickly over the next year.
Yeah, I think that we would bring, continue to bring more, several more of these to the board.
Any additional questions? Zach, I think we're ready for your resolution.
Okay. Staff respectfully requests that the board approve the following resolution. Resolve that the board approve an award of Home Investment Partnership Program American Rescue Plan Act funding in the amount of $262,794 to the organization set forth in Table A as recommended by staff.
Board, we have a resolution before us. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Mike Sherman, move for approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Travis.
Thank you, Mike. Kelly, you second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Oh, Suzanne Crouch votes yes. Mark Pascarella?
Aye.
Kelly Mitchell?
Aye.
Gene Midcast absent. Andy Place?
Aye.
Mike Shopmar?
Aye.
And Tom McGowan is absent. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
Please welcome Jeff Zongolowitz, who will present the reallocation of Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Vouchers Board memo.
Morning, Board.
Morning.
Some background on this program. This is for the VASH, Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program. Over the years, we've received several VASH awards throughout the state. So today I'll be speaking about our awards with the Northern Indiana VA, which is the VA that operates services mainly out of South Bend, Fort Wayne, and Marion, Indiana, as well as the Indianapolis VA. Throughout the years, we've gotten several VASH awards with both of these VAs. However, we have never been provided the authority up until this August to reallocate between those awards, so to transfer vouchers from from our housing authority to another housing authority in that VA's jurisdiction, or from another housing authority to us in that VA's jurisdiction, which has been needed for several years because just since these awards were initially made 15, 20 years ago, the landscape of veteran homelessness in the state has changed, and where those vouchers and resources are needed is different. So by reallocating these vouchers between different public housing authorities in the state, we will be able to better put the resources where the need is for homeless veterans in our state. So a little bit of background on this process. HUD released a notice in August describing what the process for this would be. In September, we met with the Indianapolis VA, the Northern VA, South Bend Housing Authority, and Bloomington Housing Authority to discuss what needs the VA was seeing around the state for this population and where the vouchers would make most sense to be placed in the future. Through that process, we identified that we currently utilize 100% of our vouchers with the Indy VA. Our Bloomington Housing Authority had some vouchers available that were unutilized due to just tight housing market there and ability to get their vouchers leased out. So they requested that some of those vouchers from Bloomington Housing Authority, 25 of those vouchers to be exact, would be transferred to us so that the Indy VA could work with veterans in central Indiana to lease up in our jurisdiction. And then the Northern VA identified that there were additional vouchers needed in South Bend Housing Authority. Our utilization with the Northern Indiana VA was a bit lower due to, it was about 70% due to just a lack of referrals in our jurisdiction up there. So the Northern Indiana VA identified that they'd be able to utilize those vouchers in South Bend and requested that we reallocate 90 of our VASH vouchers to the South Bend Housing Authority for the Northern Indiana VA to be able to utilize those vouchers there. So I'll have two resolutions today, one for the transfer of 90 vouchers from IHCDA to South Bend Housing Authority in partnership with Northern Indiana VA, and then one for IHCDA to receive a reallocation of 25 VASH vouchers from Bloomington Housing Authority. So before I proceed with the recommendation, I can take any questions.
Any questions, board members? And will we need to do these two resolutions?
Yes.
All right. We're ready for your first resolution.
Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolve that the board approve IHCDA to reallocate 90 VASH vouchers to the South Bend Housing Authority in partnership with the Northern Indiana VA and in accordance with the processes described in PIH Notice 2022-2.
Board, we have a resolution before us. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Mark Pascarella, move to approve.
Thank you, Mark.
Kelly Mitchell, second.
It's been moved and seconded. Suzanne Crouch votes yes. Mark Pascarella.
Aye.
We have Kelly Mitchell.
Aye.
June Midkiff is absent. Andy Place.
Aye.
Mike Schottmeyer.
Aye.
Tom McGowan is absent. Thank you. And we're ready for your second resolution, Zach. Or Jeff, I'm sorry.
Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolve that the board approve IHCDA to receive a reallocation of 25 VASH vouchers from the Bloomington Housing Authority in partnership with Indianapolis VA in accordance with the process described in PIH Notice 2022-25.
Board, we have a resolution before us. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Kelly Mitchell, move to approve.
Thank you.
Mark Pascarella, second.
It's been moved and seconded. Suzanne Crouch votes yes. Mark Pascarella.
Yes.
Kelly Mitchell.
Aye.
June Midkiff is absent. Andy Place.
Aye.
Mike Schottmeyer.
Aye.
Tom McGowan is absent. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Please welcome Alan Rakowski, who will now present the TCAP monthly update. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Here today for the monthly TCAP updates, through which, as you recall, delegate authority was granted IHCDA in September of 2021 and extended to March 24th of 2023. The following awards were made after the last board meeting of tax credit deals that had experienced a financing gap due to cost increases. We have 5 deals to report on. The first is Willie Cooper 9%. This is a rehab deal developed by Willie Cooper Development, Scattered Site Development. Uptown East, which is a rehab developed by Investment Property Advisors in Valparaiso. Chapman Crossing, new construction by Willie Cooper Development in Corydon. 34 East, new construction by Advantix Development Corporation in Marion. And Evansville Townhomes 3, also by Advantix Development Corporation, new construction in Evansville, Indiana. All 5 were approved for the maximum $500,000 under the program. This brings the total number of approvals to 25 since the program started, totaling $11,460,411 in TCAP funding. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Alan? Thank you, Alan.
All right, thank you.
Please welcome Richard Hartford, who will present the Misty Glen bond recommendation. Good morning.
Madam Chair, Board, good morning. I have 4 requests in front of us. They're all for issuance of tax-exempt, non-recourse debt. So before I have to say that for all 4, I'll say one's for them. So the first one is a multifamily transaction, Misty Glen. This one has got to sound familiar to you because it's been in this committee a handful of times. But as a refresher, it's a Flaherty and Collins transaction. It's 80 units, family rehab in Hebron, Indiana. The dollar amount remains unchanged at $6,500,000. You first approved this transaction in June of 21. In May of 22, you approved the issuance of tax exempt bonds. In July of 22, you approved a structure change that went from a cash collateral to a direct placement. And today we're asking for a change for the lender in that from Cedar Rapids to First Merchants Bank of Indiana. I would tell you that as we go through an economy where rates are going up and costs are escalating, I suspect we're going to see more of these sort of changes as from what we originally approved for the issuance of tax exempt debt to when we finally get to closing. So that's what this one is all about, and staff recommends the approval of this bond financing agreement.
Questions, board members? I think we're ready for your resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolve that the board approve the change in the bond financing agreement pursuant to the attached resolution as recommended by staff.
Board, we have a resolution before us. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved. Mark Pascarella.
Thank you.
I'll second. Kelly Mitchell.
Thank you, Kelly. It's been moved and seconded. Suzanne Crouch votes yes. Mark Pascarella.
Aye.
Kelly Mitchell.
Aye.
June Midkiff's absent. Andy Place.
Aye.
Mike Schottmeyer.
Aye.
And Tom McGowan is absent. Thank you. So resolution passes. Rich, I guess we're ready for your second one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is City Heights Apartments. This one you all approved in September of 22. It's a PedCore development. It's new construction. It's family units here in Indianapolis. And we are asking for the approval to issue non-recourse tax exempt debt in the amount of $33 million.
Any questions? I guess we're ready for your resolution, right?
Thank you. Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approve the Series 2022 multifamily housing revenue bonds, parentheses, City Heights Apartment Homes Project, close parentheses, pursuant to the resolution attached hereto as Exhibit A and is recommended by staff.
Board, we have a resolution before us. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved, Mark Pascarella.
Thank you.
Second, Mike Schotmeyer.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Suzanne Crouch votes yes. Mark Pascarella.
Aye.
Kelly Mitchell.
Aye.
June Midcap's absent. Andy Place.
Aye.
Mike Chopmar.
Aye.
Tom McGowan is absent. Resolution passes. Number 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This one is National Warehouse Projects. This one you as a board approved in October of 22. It's new construction, 137 family units here in Indianapolis. And we are requesting approval for the issuance of notes to the extent of $22,100,000, of which our interest in that is $14,135,815 of tax exempt debt issuance.
Board, we have a resolution before us. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved, Mark Pascarella.
Thank you.
Second, Kelly Mitchell.
It's been moved and seconded. Suzanne Crouch votes yes. Mark Pascarella.
Aye.
Kelly Mitchell.
Aye.
June Midcap absent. Andy Place.
Aye.
Mike Schotmar.
Aye.
Tom McGowan is absent. That passes. And number, what are we on, 4? Number 4, Richard.
Thank you. This one's a little different. This one is a request to issue tax exempt debt to support the purchase of mortgages in our single family bond resolution. So this is a request for the issuance of Series 2023A. Again, non-recourse to IHCDA. It's to our bond resolution. We're requesting approval of $250 million. We always ask for a lot of flexibility in the dollar. I suspect this will be a smaller issuance of $100 million. I find that interesting in terms of a smaller issuance at $100 million. My first issuance when I got here was $45 million, and I thought that was huge. But that's what we're asking for. We have a little bit, we've gone from doing 2 issuances a year to 3 as demand has increased. I think this year I'd prep you for the idea that we may do 4 issuances. As rates continue to rise, we'll do smaller issuances in an effort to mitigate our interest rate risk in this. As always, we've sought counsel from our friends and partners at IFA. They understand what we're doing. This we again expect to be a fixed rate issue and a blend of both taxable and tax exempt as we work to stretch our volume cap. So I will stop there and take questions.
Any questions for Rich? I believe we're ready for your resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approve the issuance of 2023 Series A bonds and the related bond documents and disclosure documents is substantially final in the form presented, and authorize any authorized officer to execute the same as recommended by staff.
Board, we have a resolution before us. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Move to approve, Mark Pascarella.
Thank you.
Second, Kelly Mitchell.
It's been moved and seconded. Suzanne Crouch votes yes. Mark Pascarella.
Aye.
Kelly Mitchell.
Aye.
June Midcap absent. Andy Place.
Aye.
Mike Schotmar.
Aye.
Tom McGowan is absent. That resolution passes. Thank you, Richard.
Madam Chair, as I
Yeah,
look at my notes, I missed one thing. Do you mind if I add a comment here?
You please.
Yeah, so this week was an interesting week, a good week for our single family folks. We crossed the $500 million threshold in reservations. So, reservations for when folks go in and apply for a mortgage and the lender reserves a rate. There's some fallout in that, right? We've not all those turned into loans, but it's how we measure current volume on a weekly basis. And So we crossed the $500 million threshold this year. That means we're up about $58 million year over year, or 13% increase. So while we read about housing shortages and housing demand, there's still a lot of demand in the affordable space. Thank you.
Good news, thank you. I think we're now ready for our executive director, Jacob Seib.
Yeah.
Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also mentioned those are responsible mortgage loans too as well. So we're making really, our borrowers stay in their homes. Issues or challenges with past due or anything like that. So really proud of the work that we have with our homeownership team. Also the outreach that they've done over the last, specifically the last 2 years, getting out with our lenders, our mortgage loan officers across our state and our realtors to inform them of our products and to work with them on making sure that homeowners who would qualify to buy a home using the IHCDA product are aware of that product. So our team's doing a really good job of getting out across our state. A couple of items I want to mention. You may notice today we didn't make a recommendation for the tax credit awards. Usually at our November board meeting, we make those recommendations for our 9% competitive round credits. Unfortunately, this year, since June of this year, the feds have raised rates, obviously, 4 times at 75 basis points each time. And that has disrupted the market. We have several issues that are taking place all at the same time or during the round. We obviously had a rising interest rate environment. You saw, as a result of that, higher yields, which drives down the pricing of the credits. And so all these deals that came into us have really been stressed in terms of their financial capacity on each of these developments that were proposed. If you look back till, these deals were probably coming together back in June and were put together back in June, even though the applications came in July. So on November 18th, I'm sorry, not November 18th, earlier this month, I forget which day it was actually, but November 9th, we informed our developers that we were going to take a timeout and press the pause button for a second. We were ready to go to the board today. However, recognizing that the feds had raised another 75 basis points this month, we decided it was best to go back to our developers and ask them to update their financials. We needed to have a better understanding of the interest rates that they were projecting with their construction and their firm lending. We also needed to make sure that we had a better understanding of the equity pricing as we were projecting forward into 2023. So we're asked the developers to do that. For those developments that have not asked for the maximum amount of credits, so we do have a cap on the amount of credits a developer can ask. And for those that have not asked for some of the soft funding that IHCDA makes available, like our home investment partnership funds and our development fund, we are going to allow those developers an opportunity to ask for additional resources, whether that be home development fund or tax credits, as long as it's within the QAP guidelines that we've approved for threshold in our underwriting criteria. With that, tomorrow we're going to have a conversation, just a call with all the developers to answer any questions they might have that comes from that, this decision just to hold off. They have until December, I think it's 23rd, to provide us with the documentation if things have changed, to update their financials, update the application in terms of its financials. They won't be able to have the opportunity to provide any additional documentation related to threshold criteria or scoring criteria. This is purely looking at the underwriting financial feasibility of each of these deals and making sure that we're at a good spot today where, and not back in June or July of earlier this year, where we know that the pricing and the cost of borrowing has gotten more expensive. So our plan then is to take the recommendation for the tax credit awards to our January meeting on January 26th. So that's when our plan is to bring a recommendation to the board. we feel that'll be more, those deals will be definitely in a much better financial situation than they would have been if we would have taken them to the November board. We obviously are aware of challenges that all our developers have right now that we made awards to. Alan mentioned the, almost the $12 million that we've already put out to try to fill some of those gaps. Developers are doing a great job in trying to fill those gaps on their own. My hat's off to all the developers for deferring fees and finding ways to be creative in terms of still delivering on what they committed to in the application, but making some adjustments to the applications, to their developments. So it's a challenging time for affordable housing development and just housing development in general right now. And obviously we have a great need of housing that we need to develop and that we also need to preserve. And we've been doing that, I think, responsibly with these public resources. So, but we also want to make sure that whatever we bring to the board for awards, those are financially feasible, they're ready to go. It's important that in 2023, these deals get closed and we can start construction. Last thing we want to do is to push these deals off into 2025 before they can even get their financing squared away. So that's the reason why we didn't make the recommendations today. So I just wanted to update the board on that. So the other update I wanted to provide, you may have in front of you the IHCDA, the magazine. And I'm really proud of this issue. Have several great stories in here about some of the positive impact that IHCDA's partners are doing across our state with our partnerships that we have with them. We obviously have a great relationship with HVAC, which is our Hoosier Veterans Assistance Foundation. Also, I think one of my favorites is the Neighbors Again. This is an individual who grew up in Tipton, and her and her friend were childhood friends, and then she moved away. But she wanted to come back to Indiana, and the challenge of finding housing that was affordable was one of the barriers for her to come back to her hometown in Tipton. So anyway, it's just a great story between two childhood friends, and then having the opportunity to get reunited when she came back to Tipton and living in a nice, safe, decent, affordable house in her hometown. So it's a great story. There's a lot of great stories in here too, with the work that's going on with our Hoosier Veterans Assistance Foundation. You'll see a recap of the housing conference that we had with Lieutenant Governor's Awards for Excellence in Affordable Housing. So we have a wide range of different topics and content that's in here. So I'm just really proud of the work that's gone into it from our team and putting together the fall issue of the magazine. So with that, a couple of things just real quick. We are turning around real quickly for the next board meeting. December is a short month, similar to November. Next board meeting will be on December 15th. That's the third Thursday in December. So we have that. And then before those that are here, I want to remind you, we do have some resolutions that we need to have executed before you leave. So we just need to have some signatures before you leave on those. So that is my update, Madam Chair, for this board meeting.
Any questions, any further business to come before the board at this time? If not, we stand adjourned. Until when's our next?
December 15th.
And we stand adjourned and we will meet on December 15th. And the time is 10:40. Thank you.